he had this kind of intense story. He was part of the Cold War, and then in the 1960s, he was sent to East Germany to be a spy, and then he ends up getting caught by the Soviets, and he kind of went through some tough experiences. So I felt like writing his story, I wanted to be respectful, but also be true to what he went through.
Hi, readers. Happy New Year. This is the first interview of 2025, and you are going to love it. I'm talking to Heather B. Moore, who is a very popular historical romance writer, historical fiction. She also writes contemporary romance. She does it all, and she's really wonderful. I know you're going to love this interview. Please, if you have not, go and sign up for my newsletter on jenniferbeckstrand.com because there you will be able to sign up and then I will send you a free copy of Dandelion Meadows Christmas Kisses. It's a small town romance and it's very, very funny. I know you're going to love it. Also, don't forget to order the Amish Quilt Maker's Unattached Neighbor. It came out at the end of November. The reviews are great, and it is a hilarious and fun read for January. It will definitely brighten up your month. And now I would love to introduce Heather B. Moore. Heather, thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks so much for having me. This is really fun.
Oh, this is Heather's second time, and she's just one of my favorites because her books are so popular. Everyone loves how she writes, and she's such a nice person. So
Well, so
thank
are
you.
you. So it's fun to be together.
It is so fun to be together. So, for the readers who don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and then about your books, your writing career. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm kind of just normal introverted reader that just fell into this passion of writing. I actually started writing my first book when I was 30. I have four children, they're grown, and I have one grandson. I still love to read. I listen to a lot of audio though. When I first started writing, it was historical fiction, and I've done contemporary, but I still write historical fiction. It's kind of my favorite genre, my go-to genre to read and write.
I love that. I have not had time to read like this entire year. And
Yeah,
so I have finally given in and gotten an Audible, subscription.
yeah,
And that is the only thing that has saved me because I I drive 20 minutes to pickleball and 20 minutes home from pickleball. And so I
yeah.
can quite a bit of listening in. But if I didn't do that, it's just hard. And right now I'm reading The Brothers Karamazov, which is way too long, but that's okay. It's a great read. So
Yeah.
good to
It
listen.
helps too, like if you're in a book club, like there's a book that maybe is a little long, or you're like, it's not my normal book to read, like listening to it, I think helps me read more books than I normally would, especially outside of genres I like.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And I love, I never thought I'd love listening to an audiobook because I do like to kind of formulate the characters in my own head.
Hmm.
The performances, the audiobook narrators are so good. I've been
Yeah,
pleasantly surprised. So,
yeah, I agree.
well, tell us about the book that we're talking about today, Lady Flyer, and then I want specifically to ask about research because I do
Okay.
not like research. I
Yeah,
think
I don't
kind
blame you. Yeah, it's
of
definitely tricky. So Lady Flyer is my book that came out September 2024, and it's historical fiction. It's set during World War II era, and it's set though in the United States. So it's a little bit different than some of the World War II books out there. And it's about the women who were part of ferrying squadrons. So they would ferry the bombers from the manufacturing plants to the air bases so the men could train on the planes and then go fly combat. So for the women to do this service, it saved the military hundreds of thousands of hours so the men would have more time. So the women were the one transporting the planes around the country to where they needed to be. And the women also, because of that, they had to learn how to fly them. And so they would then sometimes be the instructors to teach. the newly recruited pilots coming in to fly him. And so the book Lady Flyer is about a woman named Nancy Love, and she was the director of the program. But the story kind of covers about 10 years because it covers how she became a pilot and her marriage, and she also married another pilot, and then how she was trying to push um, the army to let women fly and do this. And they actually were trying to get this program started for a couple years before they finally agreed to let the women come in. But they never came in under like the military umbrella. They came in as civilian pilots because in order for women to be militarized, it would have to go through Congress. And so they flew as civilian pilots, but they are flying under the Air. Well, it was called the Army Air Force back then. Before it was called the Army Air Corps, then the Army Air Force, and then eventually the Air Force. But yeah, so then it actually took 30 more years for women to get militarized. But so that's why Nancy, as she led the program, she was like, just have us fly as civilian pilots is fine. We just want to do the work. We want to serve our countries.
Oh, that's great. So she's a real person.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of your historical fictions are with real people.
Yeah.
Or
And there, most of them, I mean, I do write some historical romance that is just, um, usually it's just set in the historical era where it's not based on a real person.
yeah.
But the historicals I have published with Covenant or Shadow Mountain, they're all based on true characters from history.
Okay. Well, that's just so great. So how do you do your research? I know I read Slow March of Light, which was really wonderful. You interviewed the guy it was about. Was it hard to fictionalize it when you know this is a real person? You've done all this research. Was that a hard thing, or did it just come naturally?
It was a little intimidating because he had this kind of intense story. He was part of the Cold War, and in the 1960s, he was sent to East Germany to be a spy, and then he ends up getting caught by the Soviets, and he kind of went through some tough experiences. So I felt like writing his story, I wanted to be respectful, but also be true to what he went through. But he was pretty good about understanding like when you're turning this true story into fiction, you're going to have extra characters, you're going to have some events in there that may not exactly happen, but maybe tied, true events together. And I remember when I was talking to my publisher about kind of how they wanted the book to be outlined, they said, well, we really want you to add in a female character as well, so you have two points of view. You have the guy's name is Bob Inama, if you have his point of view, and then you have a woman's point of view. And so I remember asking Bob, and he was in his 80s and married with grandkids and kids and grandkids. And I said, did you have any girlfriends when you're in Germany? And he said that he had been friends with a woman that she was German and he had met her at church. And they would go to he called them socials. Back then they called them church socials. So they went to some of them, but her father, because it was the US, the Allied powers, US, British, the French, they all occupied West Germany, and then the Soviets occupied East Germany after World War II. And so to the Germans, they're an occupied country, so they're not going to really like their daughters dating these soldiers. And so he knew that her father didn't like Americans or didn't, like American soldiers kind of thing. So he said we just stayed friends, and he just was really sweet about it. So I kind of use that as a springboard to write a fictional um main main heroine of the story. Yeah.
How much time do you spend writing every day?
So when I'm actively writing, I usually set a word count goal of 10,000 words a week, which I kind of break down to 2,000 words a day, 5 days a week.
That's
So, and it
exactly.
just keeps like, yeah, the momentum. It's not like too crazy. It helps me not get burned out and not get like, I mean, it's always a little overwhelming because you're maybe meeting a deadline, or you just can't think of the project as a whole. You just have to take a bite at a time as you go along.
Mhm. That's very good. That's what I do too. And I when I try to do even 1,000 words more a week, for some
Yeah.
reason, 10,000 words is my wall and
Mhm.
that's it. But sometimes, on Saturday night, I'm trying desperately to think of 200 more words. It
Yeah,
just,
I mean, sometimes you get down to the wire, like you're forcing yourself, and other times you're like, oh, it's Thursday and I'm done. Like you just everything just flowed that week for whatever reason.
yeah,
But I like it because it keeps the story progressing like at a really good pace so that you can, keep that publishing schedule up. But it also helps you stop and so you can just feel like, okay, I'm done for the week and I can work on other stuff. So
yeah, I love that. Well, that's cool to know that you kind of have the same philosophy I do.
nice.
Well, Heather, it's really just such a pleasure to talk to you. Got two more questions. One is,
Okay.
give us a favorite romantic movie. You've probably given us one before, but even if it's the same one, we'd love to hear it again.
So I was thinking about so there's this movie I really like. It's called Letters to Juliet, and I don't know if you heard of it, but it's about this couple. They end up in I guess I was gonna say Italy, and their relationship's kind of on the rocks. So the young woman, she ends up being alone by herself, alone a lot during this vacation trip, and she ends up getting caught up in these women that respond to love letters that are put on this wall, and it's kind of like a Romeo Juliet type, you know, situation. But so she writes to this woman that had written a love letter to someone that she had fallen in love with like decades before. And so this older lady responds, and the older lady comes back to Italy to find, she wants to find the man that she had fallen in love with like so long ago. Anyway, it's just a really fun story. And I sort of based just like the very general idea of a book I wrote called The Healing Summer on the same idea of this older woman. She's in her 90s and she wants to go back to find this original man that she had fallen in love with that had um, kind of like helped her make big decisions in her life and redirect and change her life's course. But then they lost contact. So she goes on this big road trip with her neighbor. Anyway, so I just have always just loved this story, the story arc, and the plot of it.
I
Anyway,
love that. Okay, last question. You're stuck on a desert island. What three things do you take with you? It's a little bit
so
different
okay.
than last time.
Yeah, I can't remember what I said last time, but I would take a fully charged cell phone so I could send my location to somebody. Um, I would take, I mean, there's so many things, right? Like, do I take a sleeping bag? Do I take a knife? Do I take a flashlight? Here, I guess my phone might have a flashlight. Do I take a tent? Anyway, so I probably just more survival stuff, but I would want to take something if I was allowed that would help me communicate and get rescued.
Yeah. That's great. It's all the things you've read in Hatchet, which was one of my
Right.
favorite books. So good. Heather, thank you so much. Readers, please go check out Lady Flyer. It sounds so wonderful. And Heather, thank you for being my first interview of 2025.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. Thanks, everyone.